Hello and welcome back to Rainbow History class, your guide through queer and trans history. What a couple of weeks. What a couple of weeks. It's been a lot, which is why I feel like it's more important than ever for us to learn our queer and trans history because they are trying to erase particularly trans people altogether. And trans people have always been here, will always be here. So let's learn some history about them. Today we're going to be starting chapter 2. It is called The Queer Aesthetic. And let's get started. Okay, chapter 2. The collapse of the Western Roman Empire ushered in the Middle Ages, the messy period of history marked by the restructure of society. The Byzantine Empire continued to hold across Eastern and Southern Europe, while Germanic people set up kingdoms in the former Roman Empire. Soaring high above all of this was the Catholic Church, controlled by the empire in the east and the Pope in the west. Mhm. Eventually, the Catholic Church would split away from the Byzantine Church, which would become the Eastern Orthodox Church over a disagreement about unleavened bread, leavened bread. But for now, the most important thing to stress is just how powerful the church had become. The Catholic Church had tremendous influence over every aspect of society, from peasants to kings. But during the early Middle Ages, it wasn't too concerned with same sex acts. After all, the portion of the scriptures that mentioned this was extremely minor in comparison to everything else it contained. Even as the church condemned same sex liaisons on the basis of Sodom and Gomorrah, this was rarely enforced. There are even instances of bishops and other respected clergy members having male lovers and facing no punishment. Let's be frank, corruption has always been a part of the church since its inception. Primarily, the Catholic Church was motivated by expanding its power. By the 12th century, however, the church deemed any sexual activity not for the purpose of procreation a sin. Kind of is starting to sound familiar, huh? Huh? Yeah, I agree. It also extended to masturbation, oral sex, anal sex, and sex with animals. Sex with animals is a big no-no, but masturbation and oral sex, anal sex, we listen and we don't judge, right? Right. Okay. Of course, it was difficult to prove these acts had occurred, so most people who faced trial for sodomy were unlikely to have actually committed the sin in question, at least not when they were accused of having done so. Mostly, sodomy was a useful hook to hang your enemies on. Loopholes and blaming game and all of that. How unfamiliar and ideal. Catholic warrior monks who were burnt for kissing each other's butts. I have no idea what this caption is about. Let's read it together because that is quite the caption. Burned for kissing each other's butts. Let's see. The Knights Templar was a military order of the Catholic Church that was founded during the Crusades. The order was made up of devout Catholic warrior monks who gave protection to pilgrims visiting the Holy Land of Jerusalem, Free Palestine. The Templar also established an early form of banking across Christian empire. They were extremely wealthy and lent a lot of money to King Philip IV of France. The king's debt to the Templar grew, and he needed a way out. Luckily for him, there had been rumors of a secret initiation rites among the Templars that involved kissing in quotation marks, though I am not really sure what that means, kissing senior members in obscene places. Special kisses, okay. Including but not limited to the mouth, buttocks, anus, and lower back, as well as practicing witchcraft. The king, an opportunistic fellow, used the rumors to his advantage, announcing an inquisition into the rumored butt kissing. Imagine being a king, okay, and having all of these problems and all of these things to um, keep an eye on, right? And to keep track of, and trying to keep your people happy, trying to keep your people fed, trying to keep your people, thriving. And we're like, those butt kissing rumors, those are weird. Those butt kissing rumors between consenting adults, let's use our resources there. It kind of sounds familiar to me, but let's read on. Under interrogation by the order of the king, the Knights Templar confessed to obscene sexual practices, including the aforementioned kissing, as well as heresy and worshiping a horned deity with 3 faces. These confessions, however, can't be taken at face value because the interrogation meant torture. Did you know that we are reopening Guantanamo? I just want to drop that fact in. We're reopening Guantanamo for migrants. Despite all we have learned from Guantanamo the first time and from historically torture. Anyway, the Knights would have admitted almost anything. Most of the Templars eventually retracted their confessions, but this wasn't much help. Many were burnt at the stake for their transgressions, and the king forced the Pope to disband the order. The tale of the Templar has long been a source of intrigue. The horned deity the monks alleged worshipped has become a prominent occult symbol associated with modern mythicism, while an oft-told legend of the Templar were the keepers of the Holy Grail was given a new life in the 2000s thanks to Dan Brown's best-selling novel, The Da Vinci Code. It is impossible to know if there's any truth to these rumors, but you know what they say. Where there's smoke, there's fire. It is likely that homosexuality was practiced among the Templar, as well as in other monastic orders. Monks were sworn to celibacy with women and traveled vast distances with only themselves for company. It is likely there were certain initiation rites with sexual elements to them. After all, sex has been used to these ends throughout history all over the world. Written artifacts of the time show that these monastic orders didn't view same sex practices with any particular disdain, which speaks volumes, as the monks lived very rule oriented lives. And hey, if you're a man who happened to be same sex attractive, what could be better than being forced to swear off female flesh and ride out your days in the company of men? I mean, fair point. Fair point. The medieval period in Western Europe is often painted by historians as a rather uncivilized time, characterized by little scientific progress and lots of burning at the stake. This might be a rather biased summary of events, as we explore a little later. But if we travel further east through the Byzantine Empire into the region that expands from modern-day Egypt in northern Africa all the way to Pakistan in Western Asia, we will arrive at the dynasty known as the Abbasid. Do you see my hesitation? Caliphate, which ruled the region from 750 to 1258 BC. By contrast to the Western medieval world, which was a tad chaotic after the fall of Rome, this period under the Abbasid Caliphate was not only stable but known for its intellectual, scientific, and cultural development. Emanating from the Caliphate's center in Baghdad. For this reason, life under this empire is known as the Islamic Golden Age. During this period, Islamic scholars translated a whole world of ancient Greek texts and circulated them through networks, schools, and universities of the time. Plato's ideas about the intellectual and spiritual love between men being more sustainable and closer to the divine than physical love being to influence society. Here, just like in ancient Greece, young boys were idolized as objects of beauty, which is an uncomfortable truth. It can be true, it can be uncomfortable, and it can be wrong. And we feel that. But what is not true, what is not uncomfortable and wrong, but true, is that trans and queer people have always been here, always will be here. Okay? We've just learned how to do it better. There's a difference between trans people, between queer people, and between pedophiles, all right? And we are not going to conflate the two, all right? Not today. Not on this channel. Channel is not for GOP members. This channel is run by me, and we aren't going to be doing that. I just wanted to remind you. In poetry, young men are described as having cheeks of rose and lips of sugar. Pages of rapturous, blazing romances between men, long embraces, even kisses. But was it sexual? We needed a little more context. Medieval Islamic society, beauty was considered masculine rather than feminine, which is perhaps because women were kept completely hidden. Men didn't encounter women until marriage. So during their youth, they would form deep emotional and romantic bonds with each other. Young men were desired by older men in the same way they were in ancient Greece and elsewhere in different points in history. But there's an important distinction. Lustful sex between men was condemned, and those who committed it were considered the people of Lot. Remember, the story of Sodom and Gomorrah exists in the Bible, the Quran, and the Torah. It is interesting to pause and reflect on what we consider sexual and where we get those ideas from. Acts like kissing are so often framed in the West as the gateway as to getting it on. But these see, I want and I messed myself up. But these distinctions feel pretty arbitrary when you think about it. By the same token, it doesn't make sense to say that these were loving romances between men weren't queer. Far too often, queer love is viewed purely as sexual. While it absolutely can be sexual, it can be every bit as deep and spiritual as the love described between these mystic poems. So, when referring to the love and sexuality of the golden age of Islam, we don't need to go so far as to call it homosexuality. Instead, a better word might be homosexual. And there's a poet who can teach us all about that. I look forward to learning about this poet with you. I'm trying to keep all of these around 15 minutes long. So I will see you next time, and we'll get our continual reading on of this book and others in 15-minute bites. Okay. So if you do 15 minutes and 15 minutes, you will have read for 30 minutes, which is pretty awesome because I think this kind of counts as an audiobook, and audiobooks count as reading. So let's read together. Read with me, and I'll see you next time for Know Your Icons. Rumi, who is a poet, I think a poet, that I quote quite often. So let's read about him together. Them, shim, her, sh. Let's read about them together. I love you. Drink some water, punch some Nazis, and I'll see you next time.